So over 200 of Spiritforged deck lists have officially been uploaded to Riftdex. Now, of course, this is going to be a brand new meta, but it's still a really fun window to get an eye into. So what are those deck lists, and what tournaments did they compete in? Well, all of that and more starting right now. So yeah, this is going to be really interesting, mainly due to the fact that yes, China is actually basically 2 months ahead of us. They are always going to be able to get the decks and the cards and everything a little bit earlier, at least until set 4. That's going to be when the whole world syncs up, just so you know. Now, the big thing about that is, yeah, with Origins, when we finally got it, a month later, we already started getting reveals for Spiritforged. And while that is pretty fun, it's kind of a little bit disheartening because, yeah, you know, it's like, well, the meta in China is just going to be defined, and so by the time it releases here, it's going to be pretty much over and done with. And no, that's not actually the case. What's been really interesting to observe is that we actually have had 2 completely separate metas almost from English even to China with Origins, where our meta in English is actually a lot more aggressive and fast-paced, and also just in general a lot wider than actually what it was in China. So some really interesting stuff right there. And even Jinx has had a little bit better luck in China than here especially. So it's been really fun to kind of see how that correlates. So don't make this think that, yeah, just because China gets it earlier that they have it all figured out. Actually, that's going to be quite the contrary. We have a lot of fun tournaments that are already coming out in America for Spiritforged, and we are already deep diving into this meta. So don't get too disheartened about that. There still is a lot to explore here and some really fun stuff, but I do love looking at these deck lists to go ahead and see what we might be expecting. I mean, especially with, we have Italy coming up that's going to be set 2 regional. We also have Vegas, which is going to be a set 2 regional. So a lot of those who are going to be competing there might already be trying to get an upper hand on the meta so that they can play test, figure out what their deck list is most importantly, and then just keep getting rep after rep after rep to try to go ahead and be prepared for that. So that's something to definitely keep in mind here. So let's go ahead and see, well, how do you see these deck lists? Well, glad you asked. Now, first thing that we are going to be doing here is going to riftdex.com. That's where all of this has been uploaded. Now, biggest thing here, you don't want to see the Origins metagame. You want to go Spiritforged and then hit apply just in case, but it did already change. So we have 64 decks already of Kai'Sa uploaded, 22 of Annie, 21 of Master Yi, and so on and so forth. You can see all of these decks. Now, I will say, go ahead and ignore these tier lists. They don't necessarily mean anything. Neither do necessarily the prices because we don't have English prices yet. But still, it definitely is something fun to be able to take a look at. So if you're like, well, what is Kai'Sa looking like in set 2? Oh, this is actually really cool. So we had a 12-player tournament. Well, if you go ahead and click on that and then go and click on the store event itself, you are going to be able to see what got all of the deck lists here. So really interesting. So again, this was only a 12-player pool, so not very big at all. And keep in mind that this is a best of 1 deck. But the nice part about it being best of 1 is that, yeah, a lot of deck lists are kind of already pre-cited in some way, shapes, or form. I was looking through this earlier, and there was a Kai'Sa, for example, that already had the gear removal in it at a 2 of in that case, and rightfully so. That makes a lot of sense. So that's interesting here, but again, you can take at least the template of this. See, oh, by the way, cool. Set actually did first place. Awesome. Well, what could I do then in English with, you know, taking the stuff that was kind of cited in prematurely because it's a best of 1, put that into the side deck, and then what would the main deck look like? And this at least can be, again, a good window for you to be able to figure out what maybe the meta might be going toward. And so, again, it's going to be fun to see. So we go into set, for example. And we're going to be going with the Kingpin list. I mean, he's been very popular so far. We've had some really good showings with Origins, at least, with Set, and he might very well be sticking around. So some interesting things to be seeing here. Now, also what might be interesting is that a lot of this stuff, people might just literally be bringing their Set 1 deck list because they might not have gotten a lot of allocation there. So already it looks like, yeah, that's going to be the case, at least for this tournament in particular. Now, next with that is we have, like, for example, this tournament, which is for sure set to 16 players, played on the 15th. So really interesting to see there. And Kaisa actually was a really interesting deck list. Now, with this, I gotta say, it's interesting because they took the Kaisa deck and they built it with Rumble. So really fun idea right there, and I already play tested one game with this deck. Of course, I did switch things up. I didn't play Thundersong in particular. I made it instead a best of 3 deck and switched some things in that I would rather play with it. And then, of course, made a side deck depending on the meta still. Of course, got to test that, but it's still been a really interesting list all the same. Now, what's going to be interesting is, of course, we got Forecaster, which means that your mechs have vision. That was actually a really cool ability to be able to use, because I could just go through my deck so much faster and be like, okay, in this situation, I don't need you. Okay, go to the bottom. Oh, I need you. Yep. Okay, let's go ahead and get you drawn later, and things of that nature. Gym Jammer is going to be when you play me, give another unit ganking this turn. So really interesting. A great way to use with Darius and things of that nature as well. Plundering Poro, is going to be making a gold when conquering. Bubblebot is going to be when you play me, ready another friendly mech unit. Rumble is going to be hot-headed here. And other mechs have Assault. So already just super good right there. And then when I conquer, you may recycle another friendly unit to play a mech from your trash, reduce its energy cost by the might of the unit you recycled. So kind of a cool recurrence. You can go ahead and get some big units out that way for especially a lot cheaper. And if you also spawned a, mech token for that matter, that's 3 might that you can then recycle at that point to be able to play out, like, the Ferocious Forerunner or Ferris Forerunner. 2 Darius, 2 a Rumble, a Scrapper, and that's going to be the mechs have +1 might, including me. And when you hold, play a 3 might unit token. Thundersong, of course, but Ferocious Forerunner. When it dies, you play 2 mechs, which is just, such good value. Seriously, one of the better cards of this set, and I could see this starting to become a staple for red decks just because being able to get pay 6 to be able to get 12 might out down the line is just so incredibly good, and something that can be very well utilized. And then 2,000 Tail Watchers, of course. Then, of course, with that, we got 2 Cleaves, 3 Hexagrays, 3 Stupefies, 2 Falling Stars, 3 Production Surge. Now, this costs 2 less if you control mech, which you definitely will. And then you can go ahead and pay a 3 might or mech unit out of your into your base and draw a card. Immediately replaces itself. Such a good card. Love it. Singularity for removal. No Acathian Reigns or things of that nature. Again, this is definitely a window. One thing that I did different in my deck, because I just think we do need the ramp, is going for 3 retreats in that case. And so we went down to, 2 of the Production Surge and 2 of one other. I forget. Oh, yeah, 2 of the Plundering Poro, because sometimes mid to late game, you're just not going to necessarily be able to conquer with him. So, anyway, just went down for that to be able to go ahead and do 3 retreats at that point. Also switched out Cleave to go Blood Rush, just so we had the ability to go ahead and switch out and potentially repeat to do Assault 4 in certain circumstances. So, really cool deck idea there. Then, of course, second place is Irelia. I know in the meta right now, or at least online, a lot of people are really curious about Irelia, and she was able to go ahead and get second place. Now, first and foremost, you're going to be running green Irelia, just such a powerful card that you are going to be able to utilize. Has Deflect first and foremost, and then when you choose Already Me, give me +1 might this turn. Already really good. And again, every time that you ready her, she automatically goes up to 5. So sometimes if you don't have the correct cards, Falling Star can go ahead and take her out. So you do want to make sure that you keep a couple of your runes open to try to protect her, but still some really interesting ideas here. Lonely Poro, because when it dies, you're going to be able to draw a card. Overzealous Fan, because when you are defending, you can sack him to go ahead and basically fight or flight a unit back to base. Really good right there. Disarming Rake. Now, this is going to be when you play me, you may kill a gear. So that's going to be a unit ability And so already from that, that's not going to be something that can be countered necessarily with like a Defy or things of that nature. So already that's going to be helping out a lot right there. Then, of course, we have the Mercenary itself. Now, this is such a good card because you are going to be able to accelerate it out pretty much and automatically get the +2 and ganking if you so choose. So immediately is going to be able to come in for 6, and that is going to be a big difference maker. Then, of course, another Irelia just in case, and followed by 1 White Flame Protector for that big final push if you so need it. Now, what's also going to be interesting is we have Seal of Discord, 3 Guardian Angels to really make sure that your units survive, Spirit Wheel to be able to draw a card. It says specifically that when you choose a friendly unit, you may pay 1 and exhaust this to draw 1, so really good. The Siren. Now, this is going to be fun too because it's a gear. You go ahead and pay 1 and you move a friendly unit at a battlefield to a base. So another great way to go ahead and just bring things back as soon as you conquer. You are going to be leaving the battlefield open, but you're almost okay with that. The difficult thing with this, though, is I feel that, especially with the Siren, it's going to be potentially built on really making sure that you go first. That's going to be kind of the tricky part here, but still really interesting idea. Then we have the Hourglass and Heart of Dark Ice. That's also going to be able to be tapped and give a unit +3 might this turn. Then we have Defiant Dance, one of the best cards and one of the best signature spells in my opinion. It's at reaction speed first and foremost. And then, of course, you are going to be able to give you or one of your units +2 might this turn and another unit -2 this turn. Now, keep in mind, that does not say that it is going to be at minimum of 1. You can go into the negatives at this point. That doesn't mean that they are going to die, but that means specifically that they aren't going to be dealing any damage whatsoever. So keep that in mind. Kind of an interesting mechanic that they decided to go around with in set 2. Feels really cool. Now, Defy, of course, just in case. Unguard to go ahead and add +2 as long as they are by themselves. Block is a really good card. Shield 3 and tank this turn. That Shield 3 alone is already going to be enough, and you can hide the card. Such a good card. Discipline to be able to draw 2 or draw 1 and give 2 might. Fight or Flight again, only at 1 though. Kind of interesting. Not so fast. This is at reaction. Counter an enemy spell or ability that chooses a friendly unit or gear. So again, already really good there. Ride the Wind, move a friendly unit and ready it. Switcheroo to be able to switch the mights of 2 units at a battlefield. Again, that's also going to be really interesting because it can be hidden. And then Windwall just in case for those emergencies. Then, of course, we got the Conservatory. So for those of you who don't know, it specifically says that when you defend here, reveal the top card of your main deck. If it is a spell, you get it into your hand. Otherwise, recycle it. So really good there. Second Temple. When you conquer here and your units are mighty or with 5 or more might, you may pay 1 to draw 1. So really good. And then, of course, Dreaming Tree. And then 6 Calm Runes and 6 Chaos Runes. So really fun idea with this deck. Going to be really curious to see what Irelia is able to do. Now, next, of course, we got Draven. Now, third place, and this, of course, is another really interesting idea, and it feels like Draven could be incredibly good in this meta. Now, of course, like I said, this is definitely going to be some things that are going to change. It probably will take 2 or 3 weeks to really start getting this meta defined better, or refined, I guess is a better word here, in China. So people are still play testing. They're making the switch of their cards. They're seeing how things are feeling. But Draven is going to just be really good. So for those of you who don't know, when you win a combat, draw 1. Now, this is tricky because combat is different than a showdown. Literally, if you go ahead and you are at Reaver's Row or you attack into Reaver's Row and your opponent decides to back out that unit, that is a 1 combat and you would draw a card. If you also go in and attack into a battlefield, whatever the card is, and you then go ahead and pay for Fight or Flight, and you send them back to the base, that is a combat. You draw a card. If you do that with Draven Vanquisher, also moving in, and then you Fight or Flight that back, not only do you draw a card, but you also make a gold gear token exhausted. So there's some really cool move arounds And Draven can draw a lot of cards, which I think is why he is going to be one of, if not the best deck in this next meta. Again, that's just a very Mind of Silent Night kind of prediction because we just don't know. But Draven has all the tools, at least, to be made to argue, at least, that he could be one of the, if not the top deck. Now, Overzealous Fan, I was a little bit skeptical at first, and then when I was play testing, I mean, the ability to get 3 more particular fighter flights potentially is so good. It feels awesome. And I can't wait to see, because you just go ahead and sack it. So you can go ahead and take over a battlefield, pay for 2, and put Overzealous Fan with him. And, you know, it's just such a good ability. Then, of course, Pouty Poro, Treasure Hunter. So whenever you move, play a gold gear token exhausted. Another Draven just for some backup. 2 Kai'Sa Survivors, 3 Dariuses, 1 Draven Audacious. Now this has Deflect as well. And the first time I win combat each turn, you score 1 point. I mean, that already just feels incredibly good, and a lot of things that you can do with that. And then, of course, the Ferocious Forerunner, being able to create 2 mechs that are 3 might when they die. So, really good. Then some gear, Longsword to be able to add +2. Also has Quick Draw, so it can be played at reaction speed. And then Spinning Axe, which also is Quick Draw, and it also gets +3. Now, the big difference here is, though, it has temporary. So if you destroy the unit, and the holder of that is unable to actually reattach it to another unit, then the gear automatically dies. So, you know, some really cool mechanics there to kind of balance out that +3 might added. And also, just even being able to come in at reaction speed is insane. Not only that, we got some Blood Rush going on. Now, of course, this is going to be an action that can be repeated and adds Assault +2, so even up to a max of 4 here. Angled Shot. This is an interesting one because it can be played at reaction speed, and you choose a unit and an equipment with the same controller, attach that equipment to that unit, or detach that equipment from that unit, draw 1. So something like Ornn, they're going to have Guardian Angel on them or whatever. Don't get me wrong, Ornn has a Deflect. We're just talking about that for an experience, or for an example here. But you can then go ahead and get Guardian Angel, which would save him away from him. And then that also minuses that might because you don't no longer have that equipment. And that could also shift the tide and be able to allow you to win that battle exchange. So really cool to be able to see that. Love the idea of Angled Shot. One that kind of went under the radar for me a little bit when this came out as things were being revealed. So really cool to be able to see that. Fight or Flight going for 3 might there. Hard Bargain. Again, this is going to be really cool. Counter a spell unless its controller pays 2. Then you can repeat that. So you can also even cause your opponent to go ahead and pay 4 to counter that spell. That can be a big difference maker, especially on just slowing someone down, because it's like, well, how bad do you want this spell to go through? You know, do you want to even pay up to 4 extra to go ahead and pay it? Do you have that to be able to do so? We'll see. Anyway, then after that, we got Rebukes to be able to go ahead and just play them back to hand. 1, Ride the Wind, and 2, Switcheroos. Really good. Then also we have Power Nexus. When you hold here, you may recycle 4 runes to score a point. So again, that can be the winning point as well. You can do that outside of that. That can be an additional win con. There's a couple of cards that are able to do that. Then we also have Reaver's Row. Again, really good because it counts as a combat if they back away. And then Targon's Peak, because sometimes, yes, you do struggle and you do need those 2 runes up to be able to deal with what they might throw at you on the adjacent turn. The biggest thing is a combat does actually trigger when you end up holding while defending. So if you're able to go ahead and utilize some cards to be able to do so, it can be so much more beneficial to you. Then, of course, what's really interesting is we have Annie next. So here we go, and really interesting, we have the Overzealous Fan, Traveling Merchant, Treasure Hunter, Via Destructure, Fizz, I really think the Draven should have had Fizz in the deck as well, just because of how powerful this card is going to be. I really do think that this is one of the best cards of set 2 because it specifically says that when you play me, you may play a spell from your trash with the energy cost no more than 3, ignoring its energy cost. Recycle that spell after playing it, you must still pay the power cost. So it's already a better Annie in particular. So for those of you who don't know, when you play me, you may return a spell from your trash to your hand. Well, Fizz already does that. Not only that, he plays it for 3 less. I mean, that is just as good as you can get. And I mean, Annie on top of that, already being such a dangerous deck in general, where at the end of your turn, ready 2 runes, that is insane of an ability. Then, of course, we got 1 sneaky deckhand. I almost would just take that out because you're hoping that going second, you're going to be able to do so, but it's almost a dead card at that point. 2 Kai'Sa Survivors, 2 Darius, 1 Vex, which is really good. So for those of you who don't know, when I'm in combat, friendly spells cost 1 and 1 power less to a minimum of 1, and enemy spells cost 1 and 1 power more to be able to do so. So again, you can punish your opponents that way. Again, though, this is also kind of a side decky card. And then we also have Dunebreaker as well, which could be really interesting to utilize here. Really interesting idea because it specifically says if you have 2 or fewer cards in your hand, I enter ready. And then when I hold, draw 2. So really cool idea to be able to get some things going and to get some cards back in hand. Then we have Angled Shot, 3 Fighter Flights, 1 Flash, 2 Hard Bargains, 2 Piercing Lights. This is one that I've seen in a couple of Kai'Sa decks that we've been playtesting. It's 2 and 1 in this case, and also can be repeated. You can deal 2 to a unit at a battlefield, then deal 2 to up to 1 other unit. That can be anywhere, and so really good right there. 2 Rebukes, 2 Ride the Winds, 2 Switcheroos, 1 Temptation. This can also be repeated. And move an enemy unit to a location where there is a unit with the same controller. So kind of a good way to go ahead and just get out. You know, I need to take this battlefield and benefit from that. Then 2 Void Seekers and 1 Thermo Beam. Again, best of ones, so this is going to be kind of one of the side decky cards. Then Ravenbloom Conservatory, the Candlelit Sanctum, and Zon Warren. So again, they took out the scrap heaps in this case to go ahead and try to get things going here. It'll be interesting to see how that ends up going. Oh, and they even brought a sideboard, I guess. Really interesting for a best of one. But yeah, here we go. That's going to be kind of like the sideboard on what they were at least thinking with that. So now, of course, one that's been catching a lot of people's eyes, especially at least on X in the community that I'm a part of, has been, I mean, Fiora. For those of you who don't know, she has the ability that when one of your units become mighty, you may exhaust me to channel 1 rune exhausted. That can be at any time. So for example, if you are by chance playing Set, for example, you are then able to go ahead and he comes in at 4, and then when he is played, he adds a, he becomes buffed, goes up to 5. You can tap, you know, Fiora at that point to be able to channel a rune. Already incredibly good. Then, of course, we have this. This is going to be a 3 might, and this is already a crazy ability. When a unit you control becomes mighty, you may pay you may pay a order rune power in to ready it. So, you know, 1 less for acceleration right there. Really cool. 3 Sea Monkeys, that'll actually say that you may pay 1 additional to play me, and when you do, it becomes buffed. Unsung Hero, when it dies, if it was mighty, you draw 2. Veteran Poro, it's Weapon Master at 2. Fiora, again, just to really make sure that you can get that going. 3 First Mate, 3 Lucian. Now, of course, he is a Weapon Master as well, and the first time I conquer, each turn ready me. So that's going to just be a quick get in, I conquer, get out kind of thing. So really cool stuff right there. Then here we go right here. Now, this is interesting because you basically can pay a kicker. For those of you who know Magic the Gathering. And when you recycle 2 orange runes as an additional cost, then what you can do is move an enemy gear to your base. You control it here until he leaves the board. And if it is an equipment, attach it to him. So already that can be just a really great answer to take over some things. And then Jax is really good, Weapon Master as well. And when you attach an equipment to me, you may pay 1 to draw 1. So again, just a little bit better refill of your hand. This is something that was really interesting because we didn't necessarily see a whole lot of this happening in Set. That was kind of his big downfall, was he was very top deck heavy, hoping that he was going to be able to draw things as needed, but not necessarily being able to. Then 3 Doran's Blade, that's going to be +2. 3 Bone Shiver, which is going to be a 1 and a recycle to be able to attach it. But when I conquer, channel 1 rune Exhausted and +2 Might. And then the BF Sword. It certainly is big. And you go ahead and can add 3 for that. Now, that's going to be 3 in the deck for 4 to be able to get it out. So kind of expensive. Punch First is such a good card. Yes, it does suck that you do have to recycle 2 orange in order to play it, but even with that being said, give a unit +5 this turn. That's at action speed, so you can even play it in Showdown on your opponent's turn, and that can just be so good in that case. Then we also have Challenge and Strike Down. Choose an equipped friendly unit. It deals damage equal to its might to an enemy unit, then detach the equipment from it. Then, of course, we also have Hall of Legends. When you conquer, you may pay 1 to ready your legend, so you can get just a lot. I love this battlefield with Fiora, because if you're able to time things correctly, you can channel a lot of rooms, and whoosh, you have everything that you need to be able to do so. Reaver's Row and Sigil of the Storm. When you conquer here, you have to recycle a room, so a great way to punish your opponent, especially if they happen to be a little aggressive in the beginning. Now, after that, we are going to be looking at like 2 more decks here in this case. Now, we have the Battle Mistress herself. This is going to be really interesting because she has the ability that when you recycle a rune, you may exhaust me to play a gold gear token Exhausted. When 1 or more enemy units die, ready me. So, I mean, a great way to be able to create a lot of gold, and the Mercenary can also come in and really be able to devastate because you can go ahead and accelerate her, get her up to 6, and that might can already be a lot to handle the board. Then, of course, Overzealous Fan, the Captain. Now, this is going to be interesting because when you play me, you may draw 1 or buff me. So that is a great, ability there that you are able to use. Action, again, with the kicker. Harpoon Squad. This is going to be another way that when I move to a battlefield, give me +2 this turn. I don't know how I feel about this card. Seems like it's kind of a lackluster hit in this case, but we'll see. Then also we have Yordle Explorer. When you play a card with power cost of 2 recycle or more, draw 1. Then Combat Chef to be able to have Weapon Master and a 5 might, no power, so a little great way to utilize that. Another unit here. Now, this one's interesting just because it does have Deflect too, but you are also paying 3 power for this. Now, of course, when I conquer after an attack, if you assign 5 or more excess damage to an enemy unit, you may deal that much damage to an enemy unit. I just don't know how good she's going to be here. I don't know. But then also 3 Mind Splitters on top of that. You are going to be creating a lot of gold, so you do have to be, a little happier about, the power costs on certain things. So you don't necessarily feel so bad because you might not be paying 6 in this case. But still, if you're not able to necessarily make the gold, you might be in a little bit of trouble. Likewise, though, that's going to help really attach a lot of equipment here. You got Bone Shiver, Boots of Swiftness, which also adds ganking and +2. Edge of Night, which also can be automatically equipped if it was played hidden. And Trinity Force, that's going to be a 4 cost, that when you hold, you score an additional point. Again, that can be your winning point. Now, then we also have Punch First, Stack Deck, 3 Fighter Flights, 3 Hard Bargains, 1 Here to Help, which can be hidden, and you may play a unit from your hand to the battlefield you control, reducing its cost by 3. Really good card. Ride the Wind. Marching Orders, that's going to specifically be an action with repeat 3. Choose a friendly unit from anywhere and an enemy unit at a battlefield. They deal damage equal to their mights to each other. High risk, high reward. It's kind of, what we saw with the Snapvine. And Snapvine kind of fell out of the meta because there was a lot of ways to be able to add might at reaction speed to your opponent's, unit there, and it backfired. And then 2 strike downs and 1 fading memories, and then 1 Orin's Forge. Sorry, words are hard. When you control this battlefield, the first friendly gear is played each turn for 1 less. Really good. Then you got Power Nexus to be able to pay 4 to score 1, and Sunken Temple to be, if they're mighty, you can go ahead and pay 1 to draw 1. So really love the idea of this deck. I really think that she could be a very dangerous foe to try to take down here. And I'm going to be curious to see what is ending up going to be happening here. And the last deck that we are going to be looking at here is Ezreal. This is one that I did a huge playtest if you were a part of that live stream. And seemed like a really fun deck. And I'm going to be curious to see what ends up happening. So for those of you who don't know, the Prodigy Explorer himself says that at a reaction speed, you can draw 1, but you can use this only if you've chosen an enemy unit or gear twice this turn with spells or unit abilities. So sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to get off, but not horribly. Now, I love this legend right here. The biggest reason why is because he says that when you play me, discard 1 and draw 2. That's already a really solid ability. And then optional additional cost you pay cost 1 or 1 power less. So if you go ahead and you play, for example, down here, your Called Shot, for example, you can immediately just play the repeat cost guaranteed, which is just so good to be able to go through your 4. And that's something that's pretty easy to do, not gonna lie, because you can go ahead and play Ezreal and then immediately just recycle 1 more rune to look at the top 4 cards, taking 2 into your hand. Now, of course, you do 2 at a time. That's what the card says, but still really interesting to consider there. Now, with that being said, you also have the Overzealous Fan. I think he's just going to be a staple at this point. Traveling Merchant, Treasure Hunter to be able to create a gold gear when moving. And then Card Shop, Sharp, words. Gosh. Anyway, when you play me, you and each opponent may play a gold gear token exhausted. For each opponent who did, you play a gold gear token exhausted, so potentially making 2. This can really punish your opponent too, because if they really do want that gold, you get 2. That can be already a big differential to get you there. Now, 2 more Ezreal Prodigies as well, which is really interesting to get things moving. 3,000 Tail Watchers, and then another 3 of Dr. Mundo Experts. Keep in mind, this deck did get 8th place, so it struggled a little bit, but still really interesting idea. 2 Gust, 3 Stack Decks, 3 Fighter Flights, 2 Flashes, 2 Hard Bargains, 2 Rebukes, 2 Switcheroos, 2 Invert Timelines, and 1 Unchecked Power, again citing because it is a best of 1, and then Emperor's Diaz. That specifically says that when you conquer here, you may pay 1 and return a unit you control here to its owner's hand, and if you played... I can't read. My eyes are too bad. And if you do, play a 2 Sand Soldier unit token here. So just a kind of good switcheroo there to be able to get things recycled in and around. Really interesting choice for that deck in particular. Forge of the Fluffed. Now this says that when you control this battlefield, friendly legends here have tapped to attach an equipment you control for 1 less. Now then also Forgotten Monument, that players can't score here until their 3rd turn. So again, that's another great way to slow down the game and make sure that you are able to get to that late game. So 1 battlefield just isn't up for grabs, and that could be something that really also impacts against Annie for that matter. So cool idea all around, and love what these decks have. And again, guys, these are going to be the deck lists. It's pretty wide open on how things are going to shape up, but I'm going to put all the links down in the description below so you can go ahead and explore for yourself and maybe even get some Spiritforged play testing in. I'm particular going to be entering Runes and Rifts Set 2 tournament that is going to be here on Saturday. So a lot of really interesting ideas there that are going to be explored. Still debating on what I'm going to be playing. I might play the Met Kaisa. I might also just go with Draven in particular. But it's going to be fun. I can't wait to see what is going to be had with this meta. Yes, it does suck that China is ahead of us by 2 months, but still, There's nothing that we can do about that situation, so we might as well just make the best of it, at least until set 4 when everything is synced up together. But anyway, let me know what your guys' thoughts are about the decks that we talked about in the comments below. What changes would you actually make with these decks, and which one caught your eye that you might be playing when Spiritforged releases in February? Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, guys, have a good one.